Welcome to the Infinite Creative Podcast. My name is Fitz, and this is...
My name is Sean. Welcome, everybody, to a podcast about creatives, fun stuff, AI, key people of influence, SEO, all the good stuff. So welcome, everybody.
Yeah, so basically, we have a couple topics prepared, like we put in the work, and I think Sean is starting out with a really good presentation about a book that is called... I forgot what is the name.
Well, it's no presentation, but I did bring the book, Key Person of Influence. It's definitely a good book. A lot of people have known about this for a while. Kevin Harrington, great author. But there was one page in it that really caught my eye where it talks about newcomers, worker bees, and then key people of influence, and how there's like three different kind of stages you go through. And so, like, we've always had the newcomer stage, right? Like, you and I, like, anyone that gets in the practice obviously had to have the newcomer where you're like, you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? You're like, wait, there's this thing called videography and people pay you to do that? Like, you know, you had that moment. I had the, like, wait a minute, I can make logos. I can make these, like, graphic shapes and essentially have art class all day and people will pay me for this?
It's so easy.
It's so easy. In like 5 to 10 years, I'll master this. I'll move on to the next thing even. That was literally my mind as I learned graphic design. It's like, I'll be a creative director in like 5 or 10 years. I'll do another thing after that because this will be so easy to master.
Yeah.
But then you get the worker bees, right? Where you get the people that I feel like I align really, really a lot with, where, you know, you work a lot. You grind it out for years, like decades even, just grinding, getting better, but, you know, not really moving, kind of almost feeling stagnated, and that you've been kind of robbed of something. You see kind of people that kind of live this effortless life while you're still kind of in an office working 9 to 5, and you're like, I've done so much, but what do I have to show for it? And then you get the key people of influence where they're able to keep moving fast in a way like they're a newcomer, but then also not be afraid of the grind. And so one example he talks about being afraid of the grind is that you, when the going gets tough, that you jump to a new career. And I think we both know a lot of creatives that are like that they get good at something, but then when it gets tough, when that thing isn't like super easy anymore, they're like, okay, well, there's this new thing called NFTs, or there's this new thing over here, you know, they just jump onto a new thing. And so, and how that means you'll never be a KPI either. You'll never be a key person of influence. That you need to really stick in the pocket on something.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on all of that? I guess, where do you feel like you lie in that?
So I have so many thoughts on that. First off, like, I love good books that change your mind, you know, and you get always some nuggets from books. And like, this is a nugget that resonated with you. And I feel like this is the most powerful lesson. Read books, find nuggets, and fill the gaps that you didn't have beforehand. I would love to say I would be like the key person of influence, but I'm not. But I'm trying to get there. So that is like the thing. Like I don't work as hard as I should, and that is where I'm like, okay, I need to crank that dial. But also, like, I know, like, if you work hard, it doesn't mean anything. You know, it's like you can work hard, somebody else takes advantage of your, like, you know, your drive, your ambition. I'm like, oh yeah, he's putting in the work, but he's missing, let's say, the key part that would, like, basically propel you 10 times. You know, it's like, talk to the right person, make the pitch deck right, or, you know, just like, it's like usually like little things that you did not thought about, but somebody thought about it, but they did not put in the work. So it's like, you got to combine everything. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would, you know, and I'd argue, I think you're moving towards it too. Well, I would say you're becoming a key person of influence because you're understanding. I think you understand really well the idea that it's one thing to do the thing, but it's a whole other thing to then celebrate that you did the thing and show people that you did the thing. And I think that's one of the things that I've definitely identified that could move me out of worker bee land, because because that's where I've always been, is like I get my pleasure from, if I work harder and if I produce more or better stuff, then that means I'm awesome. That means this career is awesome. Where then you kind of go outside of that bubble, right? We've talked about, you know, if you get fired or if other things happen, that bubble bursts, right? And then you're like, oh crap, I haven't like really celebrated myself. So nobody even knows. I remember like there was even parts way after I graduated as a designer where I'd have people be like, cool, man, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a designer. Like, you don't know that yet? Like, clearly I haven't, like, celebrated enough.
That is actually a good point there. A lot of people think people know what you do. Like, you know, or I think like when I was in the service industry, and one of my managers told me like, yeah, nobody in St. Petersburg knows about this place. And I'm like, what? We have signs everywhere. We're a physical restaurants where people drive by, and you would be surprised with a physical presence that people don't know what you do, that you exist, or whatever, because everybody lives in their own bubble. And to break out of that bubble and to make an impact in real life on a person, nobody knows that we even exist. So that is like the other thing. Like, so it's so hard to actually like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this thing, and actually making that impression. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. You know, and we're doing it right now, right? I think one of the things he also talks about in this book is he says write a book, but he kind of says near the end of the book is like, when I say write a book, that means, you know, it could be a podcast, it could be a blog, but you need to put yourself out there. And I think that's why this podcast is so nice, because there's literally 30 to 40 hours of us now of just you and I talking, not even to talk about your podcast, your other podcast. You know, there's so many hours of us talking about our views and our opinions, and it's really cool. It's awesome. You know, we haven't had any cancelable moments, which is nice, but you know, we've not yet getting on that Patreon. But you know, I think, you know, it's been a great way to get our voices out there and get better about talking about stuff. I know that this has helped me just talk about stuff, right? I can be like, wait, we've talked about this on the show, so just talk about it kind of like we've talked about it. And so it's helpful. It's definitely very helpful. So I think we're both moving towards it. I think, you know, I think, you know, our polar opposites of like, you know, I think we're both kind of workaholics though, in a way. I think we're both worker bees.
Yeah, that's
our processes are different. Yeah, we're definitely both like grinding it all the time. So
I think like that's life. Like that's what you should do as a human, you know, like you should fulfill your purpose and go after it, you know. But obviously you have more like, I want to have balance. I'm like, I don't like balance, because balance makes you like you know, stagnant, because you pump left and right, and I just want to lean completely to the right and just like, you know, everything's tipping in a direction. But obviously you burn out. But yeah.
yeah. Well, and I think there's something to like rolling with the punches. Like, you know, like last week we had like an issue with the mic cord, right? So what I do, I buy mic cords, right? So I buy mic cords. Like, instead of like, you know, being mad about it or being like, you know what, screw this. This is too hard. There's all this equipment costs. Just be like, no, okay, I'll go buy some mic cords. Roll with the punches. Yeah. Next week will be better. So, I mean, I think that's half of it too, is like, you know, when you become that worker bee, you're at least good at one thing, and that's going through it. You get, you know, grinding it out, stuff hits the fan, you keep going, you keep showing up. And it's so hard. I mean, I think it's easier as me being a freelancer, because I could just have a day off, or I could take a moment to go I mean, it was so hard when I was in an office, when I was a creative in like an actual space. It was so hard some days when it would just be like a rough day, and to be like, come back the next day, to just like even want to go back in after yesterday was so bad. And it's so, yeah, I think I think it's interesting though. I think we've talked about that though. You have to have that newcomer kind of approach too. I think you just don't ever want to jump fully off. I think I that's where I sometimes have people try to kind of push me off the path too much, and I have to be like, no, I this is kind of where I live. Yeah. And if I go too far off the given on the path, then I'm not really a master anymore. I'm not really in that realm where I'm trying to be a master of design. I'm trying to be that guy that has all the answers if I can in design. Yeah, that is also like a really powerful thing there, because like you picked up that book. First off, I kind of want to know, why did you pick that book up? Who inspired you? How did you came to it? You know what? I think it was actually Kevin Harrington was being interviewed. It may have been Christo. It may have been somebody, but he was being interviewed. And I love how he talked about, because I felt like I reflected in him, and how for the longest time he just grinded it out and he didn't see the results, and he just didn't understand why he wasn't getting to a place he needed to be. And then he realized that it really just means that you need, like, once you get to this place of being a key person of influence, things come to you. And I feel like that's a conversation I'm always having with all the creatives. Almost every creative I talk to is like, I always have to go out and get the work. I always have to go knocking on doors, going to the networking events, asking people if I can do stuff for them, and I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting burnt out. And
but here's the thing,
this book is like, people should come to you. If you figure it out, people will come to you.
Yeah, so that is like, First off, I admire you for actually like you going out there, you getting a lot of clients because you put in the footwork basically, and you're doing it the right way. I feel like, and
Thank you.
I have no freaking idea how I get clients, why I get clients, and people are coming to me. So it's basically the total opposite, you know. Like I don't have a portfolio. I'm just doing a lot of shenanigans, and people see my shenanigans, and it's like, oh, this is a video guy, you know, and that's how I get my stuff, you know. And it's like, it. That is where we also like be yin and yang, and sometimes, you know, like you're actually like you reach out, you do the networking, you know, and I'm just like, well, I'm doing stuff. And on the one side, like you're the perfectionist, and I'm like the done is better than perfect, and just like putting stuff out there that I maybe should have polished, you know. So it's like there's no right or wrong, but I feel like there's always like we can do more, because like talking about inspiring people, there's like David Goggins. I don't know how familiar you are with him.
Yeah, I'm a bit. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but basically he hung out with a guy and is like, hey, I live with you for, I think it was like a couple of weeks or so. And he wrote a book about it. And he's like, yeah, there's always 20% more that you could do. I probably misquote everything right now. But basically, if you think like you're pushing hard, and if you compare yourself to other people, you could push way, way, way harder. And we as humans are so much more capable of doing more things, but we become like used to what we're doing, and then like we're pushing a little bit and like, oh, I'm pushing hard, you know. But if you would compare yourself with like David Goggins, like, oh, I guess I'm not pushing at all. If that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's because it can be. I think that's almost like the stoic kind of thought is that as well, is that, you know, that just if you want to feel happy about your life, think about how crappy someone else's life is, you know, and how just even taking a second to be like, you're not in a war-torn country, or that you have access to Wi-Fi. We can even we're so lucky to even be able to do what we're able to do. So I think, yeah, the David Goggins approach is like, you don't know how bad it can get. You think this is bad. You think all of this is as bad as it can get, but it's like, this is actually great. Like there's someone in this world right now that would give everything to have your lifestyle.
This is actually very interesting, because you did like the interpretation completely different than I would do. You know, you're saying like, oh, we have it like you did the stoic way, like we have it so good, you know, and I'm just like, okay, kids in Africa, they're like way more resourceful, and they're like building like camera gimbals out of pipes, you know. You give them a little bit of resources, they like getting like close to 100% out of those resources. We as lazy Americans are just like, I put the camera to use maybe once in a while, you know, and we don't push the limits that we have, you know. So it's like we would be more capable of doing way, way more. And that's where I'm like, yes, I should be happy, or should I be happy and push harder?
Well, yeah.
You see what I mean?
Not wrong. Yeah, I see what you mean. So you're taking kind of the more evolutionary approach of when you grind it out, when you have the friction that makes you stronger and makes you better. And you're right. You're definitely right. Like I feel like that's helped me now, is that my early life wasn't easy. Like I didn't have like some rich existence growing up and stuff, and I was an early worker. I don't know. When was your first job, I guess? How old were you when you got your first ever job?
Ever job? What does that mean? Like in Germany, you go to school and you do an internship. So does that count?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, was that your first ever time it was an actual job, or?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, how old were you?
11. No, was it 11? Maybe 13.
Yes, it's pretty young.
Yeah.
It's pretty young. So, you know, for me, my first job was at 15.
Yeah.
So you're even earlier, but you could tell the people that worked early in life. I was talking to someone else the other night about that the people that work early in life and had to have all these jobs, like, you know, I did pizza. I think you did pizza as well. I mean,
it's the most American job, my man.
Yeah, man. That's how you become an American. But you know, it's
slice by slice.
I feel like they should take a year off of waiting for any visa if you make pizza. But you know, but like we've worked those grind jobs, and we've had the jobs that suck, that straight up were just like, this is destroying my body and my soul. And it makes you tougher though. So when stuff hits the fan now, it's that toughness that helps you now, where I feel like I've run into people I've never had an actual difficult job, and they're like, he gave me a bad critique. This is the worst thing ever. I'm literally like breaking down. And it's like, yeah, but like, God, man, if you would have seen how bad it could get at my old like pizza job, or Taco Bell or any of these old jobs, it's like, ugh, this is not bad.
Yeah, I mean, like perspective is everything to happiness, and I feel like there's a lot to be learned because like when I don't want to like compare you and I now, but when I was like working as an electrician and you have to go through an apprenticeship for 3.5 years, and I was like, it's snowing, I'm on a construction site, there's snow everywhere, my shoes had holes, and the company's providing the shoes, and you work basically with like gloves and everything, and you're just like freezing and it goes to your bone, and you're like, oh, I'm not at home, I'm like on a construction site like 300 miles away, and you live there for a week and you go over the weekend back home, and I'm just like, okay, I have seen hell in overtime, and I'm just like, you're just like, it's actually really good if you eat like shit, basically. So you're like, oh, I did this.
Yeah.
I survived this. It was not nice, but I did this.
Yeah. I mean, so when I was a driving instructor, I had the same type of situations where, I'd be out on the driving range. It'd be 5 degrees outside, but I just was standing out there, like watching kids drive in circles, just freezing, getting frostbite,
Yeah.
And, I think back to those days. I'm like, you're not getting frostbite. You're not like literally, like, I can't even imagine, like with my back pain. I know that you have pain too in your body.
Yeah.
And like just waking up every day to go do that kind of job right now would be just like almost unthinkable.
Yeah, on that note, though, I feel like that is like one of the things, like perspective, and everybody's pain is always the biggest, and it's like also like a thing, other people maybe listen to this and was like, oh, I did this and I did that, and then it's like the comparison of like how much you endured. Like if you're a millionaire and you never worked in your life and you're suffering with whatever work you have, like obviously your pain is the biggest pain you ever experienced. So it does not really matter what you did. You just have to be proud of yourself, what you did, and how you overcame with it and how you dealt with it. And like always put stuff in perspective. Like the new job, the new project is not actually that bad and you can get through it. That's kind of my takeaway of that, because it's like always like a comparison game. Like, oh, you did this, I did this, And
yeah, it can be. Yeah, it's kind of the old adage of like, your worst trauma is your worst trauma. It's not like your trauma is worse than my trauma or anything. So I think same thing with jobs. It's like, your worst job isn't, because there's people in the military, people have done. There's been a roofer in the middle of July. There's definitely been, there's hard jobs. But yeah, I think to kind of bring it back, I think it's just this kind of idea that it's just gratitude, right? It's just and I feel like gratitude is still like the quickest path to happiness. I think that is like when stuff is hitting the fan, when the clients don't like the work, or I'm not getting enough jobs, or I'm just getting that anxiety that I get fairly often because things sometimes are going wrong fairly often. I'll definitely just come back to that,
Yeah. Also on that note, like you talked about this book. So how far are you in there, and what is like your schedule? Like you have like a reading schedule that you feel like is like relevant and good?
Reading for me has been a very touch and go thing throughout the years. I think right now I've just tried to read in the mornings. It's kind of, I'm starting to realize something, and this is going to be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because this is a podcast, but I feel like I've been just watching too many podcasts. I feel like it's been taking too much of my like media intake time.
Yeah.
So, I want to get back to reading more. So in the mornings I kind of do, and it's very short. It's funny. My attention span is like literally 4 pages of these small pages with big type, and I'm like already, which I kind of like. I kind of like to like read a bit and then just like, okay, digest, that's it, just like 4 pages and we're good. So but it means I go through books really slow.
Yeah, on that note, like here there's nothing wrong with that, but my favorite lesson that I learned in America is like everybody's like saying there's no free education in America. Oh yes, there is. Get yourself a library card, get yourself an audiobook, and instead of the podcast time or while you're podcasting, because you can always learn something from media in general, but it's like you have to consume stuff. And like I think like it's really good if you go to an audiobook through the library, because like they let you sign up with Hoopla and you can download like self-help books and whatever. And there's talking about podcasts and books, there's media that is candy and there's media that is useful and helpful, that can provide you with nuggets, because like you maybe let's say you read the Hunger Games or maybe some other book, that maybe has one big nugget, one key idea where you cannot really learn a lot, and it maybe impacts you like, oh yeah, this is a terrible thing if this would happen, but also like it's just one lesson versus like a bunch of little lessons that can move you forward.
Yeah, and to kind of talk about, you said Hunger Games. I think, fictional. I definitely want to start reading more fictional. There's definitely
Oh,
value.
he
in
wants
that.
that candy.
Yeah, but I think the fiction can be good though, but only in small doses. The thing I like about the reading is you're engaged in the reading. Like there's no
Yeah.
way that you can take in reading without being engaged in it, where all these other mediums you're like, "Oh, I did this podcast, but now I'm not listening to it. Oh, I have this thing on over here and I'm only half listening to that. I'm only half watching the show." And
Yeah.
where reading's nice because it's not like I could be on my phone and be reading at the same time. So I like that. I like that it like forces me to zone in, but it's funny because it really shows you how much ADD you truly have when you try to zone in and read. Like how many pages can you get before you're like already looking somewhere else or already starting to close it, So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love like the times when you have like dedicated time for it. Like, when you're on your way to work and you sit an hour in traffic, for example, 30 minutes, and you have those micro doses of like listening to music or listening to an audiobook, There was that one guy, Ty Lopez, he got famous with like, welcome here in my garage, Lamborghini, and then like a bookshelf, And the lesson was basically like music is really bad for you. What is like, so controversial, but it's brilliant because like, yes, if you listen to music, you don't solve your problems when you're like thinking about your problems. It's just basically like, okay, you hit like, I want to get confused. It's like scrolling on social media. You don't really think about like things you want to do that you could do. And it is good and bad at the same time because it's an outlet where you're experiencing emotions and whatever. But if like you don't listen to anything or you don't consume anything, you get some really deep thoughts, and get really good ideas.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that you can't always have sound on either. That you need those reflective moments, the moment in the shower when you're really thinking about something, or when you're in traffic and you're thinking about something, or just staring off in the window, just staring off in the distance.
Yeah.
So I know for me, I try to practice the walk a lot more to kind of go, and there's a couple of reasons. Like when you walk, you kind of disassociate because your body's doing a lot of things at one time. You don't really realize it, but when you're walking, your body's doing a lot. But
So
also,
healthy.
yeah, and it helps your vision too. A lot of people don't realize this, that if you're using a screen all day, if you can walk and then start to use your vision to look at things in the distance, that'll help your vision in the long term. So that's another reason. But also it's just really the disassociation. It's the getting out there and just seeing the guy mowing his lawn, or seeing the trees sway, or see the mail truck stop, just simple things. But you just get disassociated. You break the kind of the norm that really can confine you. So you're right. I think it's like having the space also, and just switching it up, right? Some days I think music isn't like bad. I would disagree with that guy. I think music can be very powerful. But you're right. It's like don't just do one thing though, right? Like spread your seeds. Don't just be like every day I listen to music. Be like, no, some days I listen to an audiobook. Maybe some days I listen to music. Some days I actually make sure to turn it off. And maybe you have to schedule that. Like you said, like maybe there's every day of the month, you're like, I'm not going to listen to anything on my way into work. This is the meditational quiet day where I just drive in.
But that is like brings me also like to a thing like this right now. If you consume media, you're getting brainwashed in a way. There's a good way of brainwashing where you learn something, and it's like it engages you, inspires you, basically helps you to solve your own problems. And that's like what my kind of goal with this podcast is. Hopefully yours too, like basically inspiring people to do shit, whatever that is, like art, creative, whatever. But then there's like, hey, now I'm listening to a sad song that makes me emotional. And now I'm thinking about emotional, sad things, and you go down in a circle that is not good for you, because it's not like, oh yeah, a happy song, because everything influences you and brainwashes you. And sometimes like that is like one of my biggest things where I maybe get canceled for. But there's a lot of like in alternative metal, like depressive lyrics, and I hate that. Like depressive lyrics in metal or whatever music genre, you ingrain them in your brain, and then you just like think about that in the same way, and the lyrics become ingrained in you. And if they're negative, it is really, really toxic. And yeah.
Yeah, you know, I could agree with that. I think it's it's a hard line to walk, right? Because I know people that listen to metal and they're the most peaceful people on the planet. I mean, obviously, like you and Rachel, for example, are people that listen to rock, and you guys are the nicest people in the world. You're not like, you know, super sad all the time, and you're happy a lot of the time. Yeah, I think it's if it causes you happiness, I guess that's what would be my caveat, right? So if like metal causes you extreme happiness and makes you feel safe and stuff, then yeah, I would say go. I obviously, yeah, it's
less about the music. It's more about the lyrics, you know, because like that is like the kicker. Because like if you know lyrics that are kind of like associating or reinforming, like, hey, you're broken, or you know, then it's like that is like where I'm like, oh.
You're not wrong. That's why I'm having a hard time answering it, because you're not 100% wrong when you say that, because I think it does create this cycle of like even like a lot of when I was younger and a teenager going through my emo teenage years, you know, it was, you know, a lot of those songs were like, yeah, they understand me, but it fed into it though. Like, you know, the tears that crash around me, you know, like,
oh yeah, both from a one time. Let's go.
You know, so it's like I just, you know, I'm sitting there listening to Sace and just like, oh god, yeah, like, you know, and you know, and just death metal even. I definitely listened to a lot of stuff back then that were just like very like dark, you know, dark, you know, I would just say it, dark, and you know, even Korn and things like that, where like the themes are pretty dark and morbid, and I don't know, it's weird. It's like I look back at those days, and I think the thing that attracted me to that stuff was the edginess, I guess, of it. But you're right, because it creates this weird cycle of animosity and darkness and this dark energy, and then when people meet you they get that dark energy. And
it can be like, because like there's always like multiple facets to somebody, and I don't want to say like, oh yeah, if you listen to pop music or country, it couldn't go that way, you know. It's just like obviously there's melodies that are sad, you know, but it's like you should control what you consume and why you consume it and what does it do and what does it mean. Because I'm getting highly allergic nowadays to like, oh, if I hear negativity of people, you know, obviously nobody's perfect, you know, and I'm like always trying to push like, oh, I've got to be positive, you know, because like that reinforces like, or at least puts a bumper into the negativity. And I think like if you consume content or whatever you consume, you have to be really, really aware of what you're consuming, why you're consuming it. And it should do something positive to you, you know, in a way.
I think so, in a way. I think, and I think, I don't know. I do believe that people should always be allowed to be sad too, though. I always feel like it's we should never we should never banish sadness and things like that. I don't think, like, you know, like you're not allowed to feel those things. I think it's okay to have this balance. I think it's okay to, you know, now to feed the darkness, is that good? No, I think you have to definitely fight those urges. But I think like if something bad happens, there's just things that are going to happen and you're going to feel bad. It's not like you have to banish that away. It's like, you know, there's going to be truly upsetting things that happen to you in your life, and maybe then that's when the sad song does help you. It actually does bring happiness, because you're like, I'm not alone. I actually don't feel super duper alone right now. Yeah. And if that then brings you to a good place, that's good. But I think you're right when you say just be aware, though, right? Like, know if that's happening. Know if the dark song is actually bringing you happiness or if it's bringing you darkness. And I think there's a good point in that, where like I think that's why I don't listen to death metal anymore, is because it doesn't really bring me happiness. It really just gets me to a darker place, and just realizing that. Now I like dark music myself because of the edginess. So when I find stuff that's still edgy to me, that I'm like, yeah, that's still like, I don't know what it is, but there's like a vibe about that. I'm still about that. But do I listen to dark music all the time? No. I mean, you know, what's been really interesting is recently I've been listening to smooth jazz when I work.
Jazz. He's like jazzing it up. I like it.
If you ever want to have a calm day, it used to be an old trick I used to do, is when stuff would hit the fan and everything was going to hell, I would just be like, put on the smooth jazz, and it would just calm me down. Little saxophone.
Somebody playing in the back.
It just chills me out, bro. You get a coffee, have that coffee smell. I'm just like, I'm in it. I'm in the jazz cafe.
Yeah. So on that note, like to switch it up, because now we talk about mindset, things to do, what you're as a creative, it's really powerful. But I'm also like, what I think is also really powerful is like building systems. You know, I'm probably annoying you with like the whole, we should build systems, we should do this, we should do that. And I'm like always like kind of in that niche, you know, because like I'm like, this is my weak spot, you know. So I'm trying to grind that out, and I'm just like, yeah. If
I'm all about systems. You're talking to the systems guy, man.
I know, but I feel like, you know, like if you build systems, for example, every first day, consistency, you know, and you build like little things, you can become really powerful in creating like a lot of media or output or art. So that is like a thing where I'm like really interested in right now. So currently I'm planning on producing way more content for my YouTube channel, because like, okay, we got the system here. Every Thursday or Friday sometimes we sit down, do our podcast, depending on what's happening, and it's weekly, and we're doing it for so many episodes, you know. And if you build a system to create your art like that with a fixed schedule, that alone will 10 times your output. Like if I compare like me doing content when I feel like it versus like, oh, I gotta do it because somebody else is involved, changes the game.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. I agree about the system, because it's like brushing your teeth, where you don't really give yourself the choice to do it anymore. You just do it. It's just part of your day now. Hopefully for you guys out there, brush your teeth. And you know, I feel like that's the power, right? Is like the podcast for us now, at least in my eyes. I don't know. I can't speak for you, but in like my mind now isn't really a choice every week. It's not like I'm like, should we even do that this week? I don't know. I'm just like, no, we're going to do it. And if we can't do it Thursday, we'll do it Friday. If we can't do it Friday, we'll do it Saturday. But we'll do it. We're going to figure it out. We'll get it done. And so I think that's when it gets really powerful. Workouts are the same thing, right? Once you do it every day, it slowly stops being a choice. Now you're just like, I just do it every day. And then you almost start to be like, this makes me happy. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. The building the system is super important. Now, for me, my only thing that I've learned about myself is also not getting lost in the system or being too rigid about the system.
Yeah, I love that.
It's got to be like the system, but it's got to be able to take some earthquakes. It's almost like a skyscraper. It's got to be able to have some wiggle to it.
Yeah.
Because I've hurt myself in the past by being like, you got these rules and you broke them. You're a failure now because you broke the rule, and you can't be like that. You have to do it again, that roll of the punches.
Yeah, and that is like another thing. Like you always have to like, I think we said it on the podcast once before, but who knows? First listeners, subscribe, hit the like button. But if you do something consistency, you also have to plan in experimentation. The most important thing, because I love experimenting, and it's like in my, you know, if I get an idea, I see something. For me, it's like, I don't care if I mess it up, as long as I can experiment and I get data from it, because I love getting data, because that's the only way how you learn, you know, when you do the repetitions and you innovate. And the more often you can innovate and get repetition in, the better you will become. But also like there's like an aspect of strategizing and planning and how to get the most bang for the buck, where you actually have to just sit down and think about it. Because like currently on YouTube, I plan on producing like a ton of content, but the way how I want to do it is like, now I will make a live stream. Out of that live stream, I will record the live stream. Then later on, I will film B-roll and combine the B-roll with the live stream and put up an edited video. And with that, I can then use like live stream for cutting reels, and I can use reels out of the basically out of the separated high quality edited video reels. So that is also like a thing you kind of have to strategize.
Well, it's understanding your time and understanding that to cast a wide net, that the things have to be very tight, right? So like even in this episode, my preparation this podcast, my preparation of every episode for the thumbnail part and the kind of the getting the description in there, all those things, that I've gotten that so tight now that there is literally a process that gets it so this only takes an hour to an hour and a half every week, where at the beginning took 4 to 5 hours out of every week. Now I've gotten down to an hour and a half. That's
actually really good.
Yeah.
Like, let's go through this. Like, for all the people who don't know what you're talking about, because, like, obviously, if you're in the car and you listen to this, you will have no idea what he's actually doing for the podcast. Besides like talking. But what'd you do? Like, break it down.
Well, yeah. You do all the magic in terms of the video. Fitz is definitely doing all of the video work. So anything that you see that's video, that is 100%. Fits and so once he uploads going in there creating a description, but what I've found in the past is I used to create the title and the description and then do the timestamps, but I found that do the timestamps first, and that's what's going to feed the description and the title, because I don't actually it's funny how much in a week you kind of forget about an episode, but so doing the timestamps, running through the episode at 2 to 3 times speed. Going through that. There's a few other little tricks, pro tips in there, but I won't get into that.
Oh, he hiding some.
I'm hiding a couple things out there. I got to keep competitive. And then, so typing those up, I just type them up as I watch the episode. So it's nice because I find things too. I'm kind of the last, our last thing to find any mess ups or anything where, like, at least you can always trust that Sean's going to go through the entire episode at least once before we upload. But then, go through it, create the description. As of recently, if I don't like what I'm coming up with in the description, I run it through AI. It makes it even better. Then put it into YouTube and Spotify. And then also the thumbnail. The thumbnail can be the hardest part,
you do actually a really good job of that, because like we don't have a lot going on here, like I maybe sit in my office and Sean sits behind his wall. I'm like, there's not much to work with besides our beautiful faces, but
it's quite a bit to work with, baby. No, but it's hard. Well, sometimes it's hard too because we talk about so much stuff, right? It's like, God, what do I focus on, right? Because I don't ever just want to have like podcast number 572. Like, I'm just like, for me, I'm like, so what? Why do I want to watch that podcast, right? So I'm always trying to figure out like what's the title, what's like the theme, and that sometimes can be the hardest part. Sometimes that will stump me for about 5-10 minutes where I'll start with just getting pictures of us, just looking. You make better faces than me. Sometimes I have such stoic faces, just like, and I'm just like trying to grab something.
My name is special.
You have like a lot of, crazy stuff you do. So you're easy, but it's just finding some crazy thing and then putting that in and being like, okay, we're kind of talking about this. And then Photoshop magic, and then creating a template. So I would tell people, if you make a thumbnails, you do stuff like that, templatize. I know we've talked about it in the past, but always make a template. If you know you're going to make 100 of this thing, if you make a template and you make it super solid and you spend an extra hour or two at the very beginning to make a super solid template, now we're here in our late 30s in episodes, about to go into our 40 episodes.
Gosh, I get a midlife crisis. Still using that same template.
Yeah, I know. We're about to have our midlife crisis.
40th episode. Oh God, back in the days, you remember? Episode 21 was a banger.
We'll have to do like a real episode where it's just like our episode 50 will just be us doing like replays of old episodes. Remember when you said that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some really sweet insiders with like what was the German one where I was in Germany and we talked about them ideas. I don't want to misquote it because then we get
yeah. Our ideas are like special workers out there. Special workers.
Yeah. Cheap to get and fun to do if you execute.
Exactly. Fun to do, hard to execute. I like that. So I think, it's been cool to do this podcast with you. I think just because, it's been a good thing to have to do every week and to work through and to see. It's cool to see like the output of it, right? To get data on something. I like that you say that all the time. You're like, just trying to get data. And I'm like,
I mean, that's what it is.
That's what I'm always telling clients is like, we got to get data on this. We have to know if it's good or not. We don't know. We're assuming we know. Yeah. We're assuming that we're our audience. We don't even we don't know if we're our audience. Like, our audience may not be freelancers for all we know. We just assume that, so
yeah,
it's like,
actually, whoever is listening and subscribing to this, who are you? What do you do? Like, comment down below. Always curious. But yeah.
Yeah. Especially, yeah, if you do something creative, definitely comment below. Because I want to know, because there's so much creative arts, right? I'm talking to a few people that I may have on here where their creativity is interesting because it's more in like the building landscaping world and stuff. And I think, just so if you're out there and you feel like you use creativity in your job, yeah, comment below, especially if it's something that's not super obvious, but you feel like there's creativity, because I think there's a lot out there.
Yeah, creativity isn't everything. Like you could be like, okay, I'm like cleaning windows or whatever. There's a creative way how you could do, like, or maybe you do it this time this way or whatever, or the pattern or whatever you do. There's creativity and beauty isn't everything.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the systems and processes, because like we talked about, like you got to innovate, and you need to strategize, but also you need to improve. And I feel like that is like a thing that is also being overlooked, or too hard focused on.
Yeah. I feel like it's funny you say that. Just this last few days, I've been kind of like, I don't really do any like education anymore. I'm so dang busy with work that like that time to like I'd bought like 2 Udemy courses like 6 or 7 months ago that was on I think like UX design and things, just to kind of rehash over things and just never have touched them. There's so much of that I think it's super true that like you have to somehow schedule out the time to develop yourself too. I mean, do you have any secrets to that? I mean, when do you
so first off, we're not like the media moguls that we are supposed to be or want to be or whatever, but I feel like with innovation, so the best thing you can do is like play a lot of Factorial, because like life is like Factorial. It's basically a game where you build systems and processes, and your goal is like to escape the planet while building like really complicated systems to get a lot of resources. And it's like kind of like real life, but in the end, it's like if you never improve, you will go at a really, really slow pace. And if you don't try it, then, like if you don't even try to get the resources, you don't even get started. So it's like you have to try it, then you learn like, oh, I kind of suck at that. And then it's like, oh, how can I make this better? Then you figure out how you make it better. But you have to always keep trying to improve. But you cannot let like, realizing that you suck be in the way. Because that is like one of the things where I'm like, doing this podcast from the video aspect, and me like sometimes having an intro, not having an intro. I know about templatizing and stuff like that, and I have on other podcasts like intros where I paid money for and we're on a budget, and I'm just like, I could have let that get into my head and like getting like drugged down, but I'm also like, I'm still improving and trying new things, and sooner or later we will get to the same point. And then it's like, you got to innovate and then adapt, but don't let the not innovating be like a holdback, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, 100%. I think, I think it's, I think it's good to have. It's just like everything else we say. It's just balance. It's like you really definitely have to be in this place where you have to be honest when you don't like something. So I try to be that force, even in this podcast, where I never want to be the guy that's like, I don't like any of these things. We don't do enough. But if there's something that doesn't work, like if it's truly like that was a miss, I'll say it. Yeah. And it's not like I'm giving anyone grief, like giving you grief or even myself grief. I'll just be like, hey, just so it said, like, this part should probably get a little bit better. This was like subpar. But even then, what's nice is like over time, things kind of work themselves out, right? Like it's not like when we end this podcast, we have a list of like critiques to give each other. We're usually like, that actually is getting better. Like I feel like it just naturally gets better, because yet again, it's just like working out, right? Now we've worked out almost 40 times now together. So it's like now we're getting buff and getting good at like the actual podcasting. Yeah, we're getting this podcasting.
Getting them sponsors in here. By the way, if you want to be a sponsor, reach out. It's getting limited soon. But on that note, like it's like the schedule thing. Like you need to schedule the improvement time, and you have to think about it actively. And if you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. And some people, instead of like being too negative and over analyzing everything and don't do anything, is people who are too positive, and they're just like, oh, everything is great. I don't need to do anything, So it is like you said, the balance. But you have to be like, you cannot be either or, like too positive or too negative, because you will not improve.
Yeah, it's like that's where I almost feel like, because you went to Factorio, gamification, man. I think if you can start to turn this into a game for yourself, it can that's where that can come in really well. Where like yeah, you're evolving, you're adapting, but you're leveling up. There's this idea that you have a skill tree that you're leveling up, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to keep going and you're going to get to the next thing, you need to level up that skill tree. And it's kind of fun. It's a fun practice. I haven't done it in a long time to actually sit there and make your own skill tree. Like open up a sketchbook and be like, in your career, what would the video game skill tree be for each step of that?
Getting a lot of tail.
Getting a lot of tail. Okay, that's step one. Yeah, that's funny. But like so for like me, I think my skill tree is things like that I've had for this past year. That things that I've kind of knocked off the list have been like upgrading the gear. I got the new Apple, so I like finally was able to get new gear. So that was on the skill tree. But then like but also like doing things like winning the bad thing where the person wasn't paying me any money, having that go and actually have that was like a skill tree move. So it's like thinking about like what are these big milestones and then try to gamify that. Like, okay, well, we're moving to that. And then once we get to that, what is like the next upgrade from there?
Yeah. You know what you do with those people? It's a new ability that it will unlock for you. You basically get their email and their address and sign them up on the email list for the Jehovah's Witnesses, so that they get home visits.
I know. I that's true. I never thought of that. You could just like sign people's emails up in all these forms. Oh my God, it's a new form of form warfare. Oh my God.
Yeah. If you need more abilities and skills, I got you covered with that. I got a lot.
Yeah. Wow, that was subversive. That got dark quick. But yeah, man, I think like, so that's how I try to view it. And like, I think you viewed it even with this podcast, right? Is like that you were like, we should do a podcast. Like, you need to get your voice out there, Sean. You need to do more. Let's do this podcast. And that was on the skill tree of like, and that was like the first step of a new thing. Like I'd been over here getting good at like archery and alchemy, but not over here where you're like, no, you should do this new thing.
Yeah, but how much media you got now out there with your face on it, Isn't that great in comparison to not posting?
Yeah, and I am seeing some good things of that. Like, I am getting like little Instagram follows once in a while. Even the polychromic art, so that's my art thing out there, is getting like one or two. Yeah, I'm not posting ever, but like still getting stuff. I just can't find the time. It's not like I'm scared to or anything. I literally like these last few days have been insane, man. I don't know about your workload, but I've just been like 12-hour days, 13-hour days right now. It's like
work is interesting. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of the line. We got the medical stuff. We got like taxes coming up, and
taxes coming up. Yeah, I know. I'm like behind on taxes too. For everyone out there, man, I get your taxes in on time. Don't be like.
Well, you have at least a good excuse. You thought you had a tax person doing your stuff, and then they didn't. But yeah,
apparently they didn't. So yeah, check in. If you don't get like a return, definitely check in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, anything new in your world? I guess anything in the creative world, like even movies, anything that you're into right now?
So there's a lot of things going on. Currently, I'm experimenting with a new method of like making prototypes. So basically, I have my lens stands here, and I'm making molds out of them, And I love the texture. It looks really cool. But I glued the screw on there, and I basically poured resin on it, and that makes it a mold where I can pour the resin in here, silicone mold, I mean. And now I can pour in the silicone mold, the resin in there, and the quality will be really, really great. And I just have to chop that off and sand it down, and we got a perfect prototype, hopefully. And yeah, you should buy all my lens holders because we need monies. We like monies.
Where did they go to buy these?
Yeah, right now Etsy till I find somebody to build me a Shopify store.
Yeah, okay. What do I search in Etsy again? Is it
lens holders or Fitze or anything camera, lens, stands, display? Because I feel like I'm really good with SEO. That's like the only thing where I'm like being really proud of. But if you type lens stands or lens displays, I show up first.
Yeah, and they're cool. They're cool stands. They're not that expensive either. So yeah, that's cool. That's really awesome.
It's a really good way to display for like $20 or $30 free lenses, and each lens probably costs you $500 to $1,000. It's worth to display them right,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about a little bit flexing.
And I know I'm big about making my office really cool. You know, you see these LED lights and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, having cool things around. I mean, and for cheap, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, no, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, besides
everyone
that-
out there, get some.
Yeah, get some. Besides that, just doing like the typical video work, you know, helping others, like creating content, got my retainer client, helped him to basically be on the first page of YouTube for his company name and some other things.
Oh,
but I will
good.
crank that up too, and we will see what's coming along besides that.
Nice. Yeah, it's very cool. It's cool to see that you get this kind of like retainer type of relationship going. I know it was a big step for me, so it's cool to see that. Yeah, you're moving.
I need
into
more
the
of
cool
that.
freelance world.
Yeah, so actually, Sean, explain what a retainer is, because most people don't really know and why they should get it. What are the benefits of a retainer?
Yeah, we can quickly go through that. So a lot of people misunderstand retainer for salary. They're not the same thing. So a salary, what that is you work X amount of hours and you're going to get this flat rate every month. So you work 30 hours a week, you're going to get a flat rate for that. A retainer is a different thing entirely. So in the creative world, in the freelance world, you know, we always have to be getting jobs. Like anyone out there knows that we have to always be getting work, or we're gonna run out of money real quickly. And so all a retainer is a client saying, I may not always have a lot of work for you. Some months I may have nothing, but I need you to always stay available for when I need you. So a retainer is great because what it is essentially, at least for me, it's a flat rate every month that just says that there's always going to be that space. So you could still like have no work from them and get new work, but you always have to leave that space. If they ever fly in and like, hey, I need work.
Yeah.
That's what they're paying for, is that you always have that availability. There's always an open space in your schedule for them to slide into. So that's essentially what a retainer is.
Yeah, it's very beneficial because, like, on the one side, like, for clients, from the client's perspective, they know what they get and they can rely on it. You know, it's like, instead of hiring like 3 different videographers with 3 different styles, you know, they are like, oh, I subscribe to this style, this person, this workflow, you know, and that's kind of what it is. Like, you get used to somebody and you work yourself in, because I'm seeing that a lot with other videographers. You know, everybody has a different workflow. They use different apps, different mediums, you know, and that can just like slow everything down, you know. Instead of like Dropbox, we're using now a Google Drive, or, you know, you mentioned the Frame.io and like stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I always say this, and it's funny, sometimes it gets a laugh, but I tell people I'm technology agnostic because I really have to be. I don't believe in any tech because it's so funny. Like even right now, I have so many different platforms. I'm building websites. I have someone over here that wants to use SharePoint to share everything. Someone over here that wants to use Google Drive, so Microsoft SharePoint, things like that. You know, so there's people that are just using all these different tools, and so it's. It's so funny. Like, I remember when I came out of art school, I thought there was only one way to do everything. So, like, the first time I had someone tell me I needed to make a PowerPoint as a graphic designer, I was like, I'm not making a PowerPoint. You kidding me? Ew,
Yeah, you kind of need to have the 3D font, you know, otherwise it's like not good.
Yeah, I was like, ew, but you can actually make some beautiful things with PowerPoint, but you just have to you have to be okay with using tech that's not necessarily your favorite tech. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I get it though. You need to get more retainer clients as well. I would always tell people that too, is never put all your chips in one basket. I had a retainer before before COVID really hit, and I know that swiped the legs out from under me because that was 75% of my total billings was that retainer. So I agree kind of with what you're saying too, of like, yeah, get other things too. Have a few retainers. I'm finally getting this cool place right now where I just have cheerleaders that are just feeding me work now, and I'm essentially a retainer for them in a weird way. Like, I'm really just subcontracting on all these projects for them, but they're just feeding me. Like, there's one like PR person here in town that I literally have like 4 or 5 different of her clients that we're working on different things for right now. So, you know, so that's where it can get really cool, is if you have this kind of conveyor belt of work and it gets really secure. So retainer's nice because it's secure. Yeah, for the most part, month to month.
Yeah, and with that, like, talking a little bit about the money, like you said a couple things that really highly resonate with me, and you talked about email lists, you know, and if you sign up with your email list, you can manage like them, get affiliate links, you know, and if you build systems, you can make a lot of money doing nothing in a way, you know, like let's say you have the control over the affiliate links, they all sign up with you or buy over you, you know, you can make a lot of money, and that's what I'm like it is one thing to do the client work. The other thing is also like do your own work and then basically build those systems out where you have your own shop, you have your own affiliate program, you have your own AdSense money that's coming in because you wrote a blog post 10 years ago and still get money from it, There's like so many ways that you can build systems out that you have to rely less and less on like clients, what is like basically my biggest goal, like having a lot of content that basically produces a lot of money,
Yeah, well, I'm starting to, and I've been realizing this over the last couple of years, that it's not always just about creating. It's sometimes about managing and maintaining.
Yeah.
And so, especially in the website world, I'm starting to realize that, like, if my only approach is like new websites, then that means that it's always going to be raising the bar, right? Because in 10 years, websites are going to look even cooler than they do now. In 20 years, they're going to look even cooler. However, if I get more in this mentality of like, people don't just want you to create something, they want you to manage something. They want you to
improve.
And so that's helped me a lot to think about that. And the same could be applied to branding, videos, and things like that too, of like they're not just paying you to create new things. It's about just maintaining. And I think systems help with that maintenance, the under just having the steps. So for me, like I've always talked about, the checklist is so important because I just don't have a good enough memory. Maybe some people can remember 1 million steps to do something and run through it, but the less you have to think and you just go down the list, the quicker things go.
Yeah, on that note, like with that list, I agree and disagree at the same time. Like I had that for podcasts. I sometimes forgot to hit record or, and like there's multiple parts, like I have 5 devices. Each of them has to be turned on and record, and that can be, it's really, really easy. Like if in the heat of the moment you forget something, but the more often you do something and the more you bite yourself in the ass, the more likely you will learn it, and it's like the repetition part. And now I'm like, I don't really need the checklist anymore because I'll always remember or at least have double, triple backup, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But that is like one of the things, like you're right. You need a checklist and you should have like a mental, at least you should at least think through this mental steps. What do I have to do? And when you realize, I don't even know what I have to do, you have to improve and learn a lot. Because people think like, I just make a YouTube video and then I hit on publishing and then post. But like, do you have a script? Do you know what to say? If you break everything down, you can improve anything and everything.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And so it's, again, don't be a slave to the checklists, but yeah, 100%. If you can't memorize it, if you are having times you're missing things. So for example, something that's so common for new designers was so common for me is misspellings. And that should be a checklist item. Is on everything you design, it should have the checklist item of check the spelling. But every young designer comes out there and does some truly groundbreaking stuff, and then the headline's misspelled because they weren't looking at the headline. So it's a lot of, it's like having a gun or something. You never want to use it, but if you have to, it's good to have, type of thing. Yeah. It's a good thing about checklists is you never want to have a checklist, but it's nice to have when something hits the fan. Something that I'm starting to make checklists of is not even the beginning stages of the project now, but I'm starting to create checklists for the revision states. And that's where I started to realize that I have no process. So if I show a client 3 logos and she's like, I kind of like that one, I hate the other 2. Yeah. What's the process then? What does Sean do to create another round of logos? And that there was no checklist for. So sometimes that could take a lot of time to try to get back to that second meeting, where now it's like, nope, you're literally going to grab this. You're going to do these things. You're going to give it this amount of time. And then you're going to do the next meeting. Yeah. So for me, it's good because it makes me so I don't get lost in the weeds. I don't know if you have that problem, but but like the getting lost in the weeds on a problem when before you know it, you're just in a research whirlpool. Yeah,
so I have actually like a good topic there because like when I have a meeting and I'm feeling like it's not going fast enough or I'm not publishing fast enough because somebody's looking over my shoulder and they're like, oh, they paid money for this and they want to have this and they want to have changes, and now they're sitting there with me and they're just like looking over my shoulder. I get like kind of performance issues, and then I don't do like I'm proofreading everything and I'm I'm skipping steps, and that is the part where it's like dangerous because like, I just uploaded something without double checking so that they can download it, and then like it's like a rat tail, Should I blame them for like looking over my shoulder? Hell no. It's like on me. I should have had that checklist in there, but also like I should know myself and should not have the allowance of like, hey, look over my shoulder what I'm doing, kind of sort of.
Yeah, 100%. I almost think more of the second one than the first of like, yeah, don't,
Yeah.
you know, it took me a long time for this too. And there's still some clients I'll let get away from this, but there's my biggest thing now is like, I'll write it down. I'll take a note and be like, I'm going to have to do this later. And just saying that, because you're right. When when you have someone looking at you as you're typing and stuff, you're going to be missing.
Yeah, because it's like an easy fix, you know, like, hey, can you add text? And I don't even know what I want to say, but if I see it, I can do it. I'm like, okay, you know, and it doesn't sound that bad, but then like,
and then
frame rates are not
equal too.
Yeah,
they become weird, like where he's just as good at you at video. Then it's like just balances it out for some reason. Where he's like, well, no, now that doesn't look right, and it's like we're not on the like. There's collaboration that can happen, but then there's a level of the over the shoulder where it's like, but we're not the same. I actually am immensely more knowledgeable about this exact thing than you are.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that would be my advice on that is like, you'll skip steps if you let the client kind of look over your shoulder. So for me, what I kind of do now is I'll be like, okay, cool. Let me take a note and I'm going to have to do this later. And I'll tell people it's just scary. I don't want to scare you. If I show you the design, it can get really scary as I'm making it. You know, it's a scary process to see how the sausage is made. So. Yeah,
it's also like, you know, how the sausage is made. It sounds so easy, you know, like, oh, cut this and do that. And you don't know what it entails, you know. The client's head is like, oh, you just cut out this section and now the music is not matching. Now, you know, the transitions are not lining up. Or now you have to put a different clip in to just make it more smooth. And, so much to it.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because like I feel like it actually is a good thing to do to help them respect you too. Is early on be like, no, I'm not going to design in front of you. Like I'm not going to do some of these things in front of you. Like period. What I do, I just is my magic that I do. You know, it's just like, you know, when you go get your car fixed, the mechanic usually doesn't want you to just stand there over his shoulder. So what's that over there? Are you sure that's it? Wait, did you see that? And like, they're going to be like, no, go back in the office.
Yeah.
There's free coffee. Shut up.
I like that. There's free office and coffee. Go there. Yeah.
I wish I had my own crappy like garage office that I sent into with, like, Motor Trend from like 5 years ago. Just go sit in the office.
Anyhow, I think this was a really good episode with a lot of nuggets, I hope, at least, you know. So and on that note, subscribe, check the podcast out, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and
everybody, help YouTube never shadow ban us for saying banned words, or you know, just make sure to always stay in the top of your feed by subscribing. So definitely do that. It helps us a lot, and definitely at least lets us know that you're out there and you love this, and we love you.
Yeah, well, that's Have a good one.
All right. Have a good one, guys.